Welcome to the Weaver Beyond the Numbers Real Estate Edition podcast. I'm Rob Nowak, tax partner with Weaver. That guy next to me is my partner, Howard, and sometimes collaborator, and also the leader of our real estate practice, Howard Altshuler. We talk about real estate industry trends and news. Nothing we talk about constitutes professional advice. As for information and more to the point, entertainment purposes only. Howard, big news out of Washington, or I guess Pittsburgh, more to the point. What's going on?
Well, glad you asked, Rob. I guess yesterday, since we're recording this on Thursday the 1st, yesterday President Biden gave a speech and outlined his proposals for the infrastructure program, which we've all been waiting for, especially those of us in the real estate industry, wanting to see how it was going to impact us.
Well, I think you've got to broadly use the term infrastructure. There's a lot in this proposal that is going to impact real estate and construction. When I think of infrastructure, I'm thinking of roads, bridges, dams, telecommunication. There's more in here than just that. What are some of the other things that came out and jumped to your attention?
Definitely. I mean, it does talk about roads and bridges, talks about ports and airports. And I don't know about you, but I can think of a few airports that I would like to volunteer to be first to be renovated. Also talks about electric vehicles, talks about broadband, and additionally talks about better wages, retraining. It's a pretty comprehensive discussion, and also talks about how to expect to pay for it. But what I want to focus on really today is the real estate aspects of it, because that's what our audience is interested in. And there are a few nuggets in here that are specifically targeted towards real estate.
Mm-hmm. What is one of the things that you think is going to make the biggest impact just on the real estate market and on the real estate industry that comes out of the bill? If you had to pick one.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that really pops up the most to me is it seems like there's a big emphasis on affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, there is an affordable housing issue in the country where there's not as much affordable housing as is needed, and even what isn't considered affordable housing in the true sense of the word isn't necessarily affordable for a lot of people. And so the bills, or the proposed bill, is trying to make some changes to that. And so they want to, reading from the text of the press release, is to build, preserve, and retrofit more than 2 million homes and commercial buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And of that 2 million homes is to produce, preserve, and retrofit more than 1 million affordable, resilient, accessible, energy efficient, and electrified housing units. So big push on affordable housing.
Right. One of the things that jumped out to me on the commercial side is also tied to another aspect of preparing us for the next pandemic. In previous podcasts, we've talked about how buildings, whether that be residential multifamily structures, offices, other structures with dense population, may need to be retrofitted and outfitted with certain systems to help protect tenants. What is your thoughts about how this might sort of impact that, or perhaps accelerate it, as they talk about preparing us for the next pandemic, along with making improvements to structures in general?
Yeah. Well, Rob, that's a tough one. I would say I'm going to have to speculate on this one a little bit and think about it from the standpoint of the electric usage, the fact that we're trying to get more use of alternative energy sources in the bill, which would mean different ways of being able to generate and transmit the electricity to the places. So there would need to be some investment and probably some additional scientific or technological advances to that. Right. The bill talks about broadband access for the whole country. And so, you would probably want to make sure that your infrastructure for building the broadband access, transmitting, receiving, is all there. And it also talks about wanting to improve the water quality and the water supply, replace all the lead pipes in the country, among other things. And that would, in essence, help out a lot of places, schools, hospitals, right, what have you, where you're going to have people congregating maybe in a disaster or a pandemic.
It's surprising when I read that one of the objectives is to widen the availability of broadband. It was sort of a head scratcher. We're 25 years plus into the internet age. We are one of the wealthiest nations, one of the most developed nations, if not the most developed, and a leader in the world's economies. The fact that we don't have that level of broadband access available to everyone actually was was very interesting. And I think that's what going to be one of the pieces of this that's going to be felt for, obviously, for future generations.
Mhm. Another thing that I thought was interesting was that they're making a commitment to help redevelop some old factories.
Mhm.
And so if we remember way back when in the like late 90s, early 2000s, there was a big emphasis on, the Superfunds, the brownfields, the
Right.
redevelopment of that. It sounds like the administration is wanting to go back and revive that,
Right.
make some investments in some brownfield sites, lift some caps with respect to investments in environmental remediation spending,
Mhm.
things like that, because according to the press release, there's a lot of these sites are in disadvantaged neighborhoods, and part of the proposal's objective is to provide some level of social equality to everybody in the country, which would mean making investments where investments haven't been made in the past,
Right.
or at least the recent past.
And to get all this done, we've got to pay for it somehow.
Right.
Which is, you sometimes save the best for last, and the payment plan is at the last part of this deck, increasing corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%.
Mhm.
Obviously, as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was passed at the end of 2017, the rate was corporate tax rate was rolled back from 35% to 21%. It's very dramatic. Now we're talking about taking that 21% forward or back up to 28%. Still not back to 35.
Right.
Perhaps back to, you look at it, it's halfway, right? It's
Mhm.
basically half the cut. What will be interesting to me is at the same time, is there going to be an adjustment in the pass-through deduction, which impacts obviously the individual tax rate structure, because corporate rates came down and individual rates came down in roughly the same proportion. So it'll be interesting if there is going to be further traction in terms of changing the pass-through deduction as well. There are also some other tax, I'll say some tax payments, if you want to call that, built into this, or some tax revenue drivers, and that is a book tax, or a tax on, effectively a minimum tax on corporations on a book income type tax, as well as changing inversion strategies and negatively impacting inversion strategies to keep dollars inside the United States.
Yeah. And what I find interesting is that it appears that all the proposals here from the tax side of things are targeted towards corporations, which nothing seems to be targeted towards individuals, at least at this point, which maybe is a little bit safer of a bet from the administration standpoint to try and push something through. But what I also found interesting was there was an ambitious comment in there about trying to end, as they put it, the race to the bottom in terms of worldwide tax rates, because that was one of the things with the benefits of going down to 21%, is it put the U.S. on a much more even footing with a lot of other aggressive countries with respect to the level of corporate tax rate that they were charging to encourage companies to, have operations in those countries or headquarters. And it looks like we're looking to say, yes, we recognize that, but we want to set a trend starting to go the other direction. Another way, I know I'm getting way off real estate topic here, but another way of kind of reasserting the United States' presence in the world, at least from trying to do that.
Well, it is tangentially related to real estate. We have to do some of these things in order to pay for some of this. Real estate and construction will lead the way on the infrastructure portions of this, whether that's traditional roads, bridges, airports, or doing the retrofits to VA hospitals, affordable housing, et cetera. It's still, as many things do, always comes back to real estate.
Agreed. Well, Rob, we only have about a minute left, so
right.
I think it's time to wrap it up for today.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening again and tuning in as you do every week. This was the Weaver Beyond the Numbers Real Estate Podcast with Howard and Rob. Please go to weaver.com. You can download all of our white papers, show transcripts, past episodes, both of our podcast and our live casts, and all of our thought leadership. That's weaver.com. Thank you all.
Thanks.